Hello everyone, Jesse from Property Now here, bringing you another podcast, joined by licensee of Property Now and part owner Andrew Blachut. How you doing, Andrew?
What a surprise. Good to see you, Jesse.
Good to see you. So today we're going to be going over the primary don'ts in regards to what you're doing when you're selling your property. So you've heard of do's and don'ts. Well, today we're just going to cover the don'ts. Don't try to avoid this behavior. Don't do this. We've seen a lot of different properties marketed now combined 35 or so years in the industry, long time, and we're going to be over the things that don't work, that we strongly avoid doing when trying to sell your property or lease it privately online. So firstly, let's talk about signage. Now, some people, so we provide a Property Now, and I think most other places do this as well, provide a complimentary sign when you order a for sale listing and you're placing it online. So we send out a standard industry standard for sale sign that has your number on it. Now, some people don't want this and they don't want to put up a sign in front of their house that they're selling. Now, that's behavior, for me, absolutely should be avoided. You should absolutely be putting up a sign when you're selling your property. Do you agree with that one?
First thing I would say, Jess, is that not only you should have a sign, but you should put your photo on the signboard. It's crucial.
Yeah, very important. I sense the sarcasm there.
It must be, because every second sign I see has a real estate agent's photo on it. So
second,
it's crucial.
I think it's got to be a higher percentage than that.
Probably is, yeah.
That's just about probably 90%.
So a signboard is really important. If you actually ask any real estate agent in Australia, they will plead with you to have a sign.
Yep.
And look, some of it's about marketing for them, and fair enough, there's nothing wrong with that. Although I don't think your photo should be on it, your own photo.
Yeah.
But that's. But you know, they'll also you need a sign, and it's the old thing: you can't sell a secret. You know, I've had people say to me, "Oh, I'm in a cul-de-sac. You know, I don't want a sign." There's no point to a sign, but even in a cul-de-sac, you've got other neighbours who can tell people that, you know, that they obviously live there and love it, so they can tell others, you know, when they see your sign go up. Notwithstanding that people can see it on realestate.com or Domain and drive around the place and there's the sign confirming everything.
You know, I've accidentally turned down many a cul-de-sac in my life anyway, so...
I don't want to hear your problems.
But so, yeah, obviously it's very, very clear. You should definitely be putting up a sign. There's really no... I can't think of any... reason.
There are some reasons. Yeah. There are not many, but look, if you've got tenants, they might not want to have a sign up. So it doesn't mean that you know they get final say, but that could be one valid reason. You might decide not to have it. There's some gated living communities and over 55, living parks and so on, where they don't allow signs. Most of them do. And
well, very different question. If you're not allowed,
if you're not allowed to,
then you
exactly.
can't, not much you can do about it.
Yeah.
But certainly, it's not going to hurt your actual. What you're looking to do is sell, and it's not going to hurt in that respect. Like maybe it upsets your current tenants or something, but you know, I guess it's a matter of figuring out what your most important thing is at that point.
Spot on. You've got to have in my mind, you've got to have a really valid reason not to have one. Yeah. And there's plenty of good reasons to have one. Yeah.
I see quite a few. I mean, there's a pretty broad topic, this one, but the copywriting. So the copywriting, for anyone who doesn't know, is just the description of your listing, the actual body of text that sort of describes your property. What are some don'ts that you would mention in regards to that?
Probably more of a do. I mean, I know this is a topic on don'ts, but if we look at the other side of that, a do would be try to make your heading, which is part of the copywriting, obviously, the most. Every property in Australia has certain features, even the very worst one. So you try to make your heading what the majority of people would see as the majority
point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. People commonly ask us, don't they, whether they should do descriptive or point form. Mm-hmm. Do both, but keep the descriptive, reasonably brief and the point form reasonably brief.
I personally, and this is totally personal preference, it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. I do like it when they're combined. So you have your descriptive, which is like a bit of a story being told, and it has that nice sort of flow in the writing, and then the bullet points for the specific features that people want to know about and things like that. And that
works really well because the descriptive's painting a mental mental image,
Yeah.
getting them really involved, and then the point form is giving that conveyance of information that's pretty crucial.
Yeah.
So it's all good.
Yeah, the first thing with this is deciding if you want to do it on your own or get a professional to do it. Certainly something that you can do on your own. Some people aren't comfortable doing it. Obviously, checking over your grammar is a huge one. We do that free of charge every time we list a listing. So, but whoever you're with, if you're doing it yourself, definitely check over your grammar.
You know what it is? It's a case of good, better, and best.
Yeah.
So our clients routinely write really good ads, and I think it's because they're emotionally invested or because they know the property better. They just take maybe a bit more care. After all, they've got one property that they're catering to, so and they know it better than anyone. But good, better, best. The copywriters we use do it for a living, and I've written a book, but I wouldn't hold a candle to these guys. They really do it for a living, and they just
Some of them are really, really great.
Yeah, exactly. We had a lot of good comments about the copywriters.
We do. Out of every, I think in our experience, all of the add-ons that we offer are generally very well received, but copywriting and floor plans, I would say, are probably the best. Very rarely get any sort of negative comments regarding the copywriting. But if you're writing it yourself, I guess avoid abrasive language.
For sure.
Things like no tire kickers. I know I've seen a few in the past for different agencies where there's even been like sort of racialized language in a really negative way, obviously. It shouldn't need to be said, but obviously we're going to totally avoid that.
You know what? When you're doing the writing of the ad, you're already setting the stage for the first discussion that you're going to have, first conversation. So you want people in a good mood, a positive mood, and saying no tire kickers. We all get why you say that, but it's definitely not a positive, and you're just going to have people in the wrong frame of mind, assuming that they ring at all.
Yeah, you also never want to obviously even inadvertently cull someone who could have been a genuine buyer as well.
Exactly.
From inquiring.
Just sets a bad tone, I think. Yeah.
One that we hear far too often from different people is that inquiries are not responded to in sort of a timely manner, which is, I know it's hard to find the time to do all this sort of stuff and to respond to inquiries for people who are, working full days and things like that. One recommendation I would have is setting up an email address specifically for handling inquiries.
Yes. Yeah, great idea.
That way you don't have to go into your email account and see your 100 other items related to whatever else. You go into one email portal and you can see any inquiries that you've had on your property, allowing you to respond to them very quickly and efficiently. So that's definitely one I'd recommend.
On that exact topic, there's other advantages to doing what you just said. So if I'm selling 15 View Street tomorrow, where I was born, so if I went to Gmail and got viewstreetsale@gmail.com, it accomplishes so many things. One, it's free. That's not the reason to do it. Two, Gmail's the biggest email on the provider on the planet, so they tend to get through spam filters better. Three, because you've got the exact address in there, even though your address is not shown on realestate.com, in fact, it's not allowed to be, but eventually you'll be potentially talking to people from your own email address. And when they see, Johnny 1968 at hotmail.com, they think spam. But if they see 15 View Street sale or, Tamora sale at gmail.com, it makes sense to them. So they're going to...
Looks more professional as well.
Looks more professional, and you're not giving out your own email address.
True.
And all of that. And most importantly, there's two other things. I mean, if it's got to be about the house. If you get an email, it's got to be about the house if it's coming to that address. And then you download the Gmail app and it comes up on your phone. And again, it's got to be about the house. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Images is a big thing I would talk about. A lot of people, to be fair, they don't sort of understand what constitutes a good image, because sometimes people upload images that are 400 by 400 pixels, which is just really not sufficient. I would urge you, if you don't know sort of how to determine whether an image is suitable, you can always forward it to us or forward it to anyone who you're working with, and they should, if they're worth any salt in the industry, they should be able to tell you, if the size of your image is appropriate, if the quality of the image is appropriate or not. Usually you're looking for around 2,000 by 1,500 pixels if you are familiar with roughly what that looks like. But definitely we've seen some who upload really tiny images that are just not doing the property justice.
Thumbnails sometimes, accidentally.
Really. Yeah.
The ratio of 4:3. So if you think of the normal image that comes out of any mobile phone or any camera in general terms, layman's terms, would be in the ratio of 4:3 if you're holding it horizontally. So that in pixel terms, that's 800 to 600 or 1600 to 1200. So in that ratio, and in total size up to, what is it, 3 meg, is it?
5.
5 meg now.
5,
Okay, yeah. And of course, if they're bigger, you know, and depending on your internet speed at the time, it just may take longer and you may think they're not uploading, but they go up there. Yeah, so 5 megs the maximum, but in the ratio of 4:3.
Yeah, and maximum of 35 images as
Yeah.
well. So what you're really looking to do here is do your own property justice and show it in the best possible light. So you want to highlight the property from the best angles, showing the best features, and with good shots, not just like the ones where you see the person taking the photo in the mirror in the room,
Yes.
and there's washing all over the floor, and there's animals all over the place, and it's not clean. You've got to do yourself.
You're
Do
talking
the
about my
house a
room.
service.
Why don't you just come out and say it?
No, but you have to do your house a service here,
Yeah.
and you definitely avoid really, really shoddy photography. It's not going to do you any favors.
They've got better equipment too. Like the mobile phones these days take phenomenal shots, and you can just quite easily get away with those.
If you know what you're doing.
If you know what you're doing, and there's a lot of natural light. But also, if you've got shots that require a panoramic view and so on, the photographers do that for a living, and they've got the wider lens, better lens, and so on.
Yeah, dark photography would be one to generally avoid, unless you're doing a
worst.
very specific, like a dusk shot or night shot.
Yeah, and that's even light, even though it's low light. It's
Get the
even
natural
light.
lighting in there and clear up those images a little bit. Pricing is one that we see some people do a few weird things with, sometimes changing the price around, fluctuating it all the time, which just sends off alarms for buyers, I think, or it should anyway, if someone's adjusting the price.
Well, if you do it too crazily,
Constantly.
agents make a big thing about price. If you do a radical drop, they usually want you to do a quite big drop because they want to get the property sold. But if it's too radical, you've got to weigh up whether you're balancing between maybe appearing too eager with just finding the actual right buyer whose budget can only extend to that. At the end of the day, you've got to believe that people will pay a certain amount fixed in their mind that their income can afford and their deposit matches and so on. So if you sort of think about that, then you're just adjusting the price until you meet that, if you've got to adjust it at all. And the idea that you're sending the wrong message, if it's real, it should be secondary to the fact that you're just saying to the market, hey, I want to sell. Are you interested now that I've dropped the price? That's more important than the actual theory of a property appearing as though it's desperate. Yeah.
And were there any? So what are your thoughts on hiding the price? A lot of people want to do that or set a price range. Do you think that's a do or a don't in particular?
Well, what would a buyer's thoughts be on it? Do you think? If you're a buyer for my house and I hide the price, how do you feel about it?
I want to know roughly what, at least a clear range of what I'm looking at.
So maybe it'll make more people call because they don't know the price. Yep. So that's what it does, and that's what agents. There are a lot of reasons why agents hide the price. There are many reasons, but the major one I would say is to make more calls come into that agency.
But it's not valuable, is it?
It's not.
If they're not actually.
It's not at all, yeah. It's valuable to the agency because they've got 30, 50, 100 listings, right?
Yeah.
But it's not valuable to the one person.
True.
So, they might get 100 times more inquiry, but it's across 100 different properties, therefore it's the net same result.
Yeah, and they're not.
Yeah.
Well, they're not actually inquiring either, really. Like, that's $70,000 out of my price range. So is that really an inquiry if they're just calling to check the price?
It is for an agency.
Yeah,
it is for an agency, but not for you
that
as
actual
a seller.
not really.
And it just it deflates the buyer, the potential buyer, and it deflates you because now it's coming to I'm sick of these tire kickers. You're encouraging it.
Yeah.
So I personally don't like hiding the price. There are times where it's a good idea. If you're unsure of the price. If you really can't get comparable sales to look at and comparable listings to look at to form a price, then maybe there's an argument for it. But then some people will hide the address as well. Yeah. And it's like, how hard do you want to make this to sell your property? Let's hide the address, let's hide the price, and don't contact people back, and then, why isn't my house selling? So,
Yeah.
But you can do it. You can hide the price.
You can do it. You can do it.
Yeah.
I would definitely. as someone thinking, like if I was thinking about buying a property, I would definitely want a rough estimate of what I'm looking at. Just not waste your time, not waste my own time.
Yeah.
But you can obviously understand why real estate agents might want to do it.
Yes.
As you mentioned. What about this prospect of properties going stale when they're on the market if they're on the market for too long?
Well, is it stale to somebody who's just come into the market yesterday? Let's say a property's been on the market for 6 months and Lisa comes along and she's just seen it for the first time. Is it stale to her? Is she going to look up how many days on the market? I doubt it very much. Some people will, the professionals maybe will, but the average house hunter won't. And even if she looks it up and sees that it's on the market for 6 months, is that going to stop her buying the house that she actually wants? Of course not. It
Probably
won't.
not.
Yeah, no, it just won't.
Yeah.
To think that it would stop her, at absolute worst, it might make her, think what's wrong with this house. In the worst case scenario.
That is the absolute worst case scenario.
Yeah, absolute worst case scenario. And does that mean she's not going to inquire about it? That's a bridge too far. I don't think that's going to happen.
So if you're the seller and she inquires and she says to you, what's wrong with the property? Why has this been on the market for 5 months and it hasn't sold?
Oh, well, we had it on at too high a price originally.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
Pretty
all it is.
pretty easy
Yes.
fix.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, just a legitimate. The reason these things work well is because they're truthful. You don't have to make them up. So therefore, it comes across as it should. And not too many houses outside the boom sell in the first week. So. But the idea of staleness is a convenient one for agents because that way they can ask for a price reduction and get the thing sold.
I think a big one that I would talk about as well would be sort of panicking and second guessing yourself when you're selling a property. Yeah. Again, it sort of leads into that where it's air quotes gone stale. It's been on the market for too long. You feel, and you start second guessing your pricing, the images, the copywriting, and you sort of start panicking and entertaining things that you maybe.
Yeah, this is common. The panicking is common. Sometimes in the first week. Which if you're in the industry, that's kind of crazy.
I've definitely had sellers contact me after 48 hours of a multi-million-dollar property being on the market, and they're saying, "Why haven't I got no inquiries?" And it's been 48 hours, and this is not everyone's price range.
Yeah, exactly. And look, we've marketed everything on property now from $6,000 block of land in Tassie to an $8 million property on the Gold Coast. If something's not selling, it won't be because you're private selling. It won't have. It's very unlikely to have anything to do with that. It'll be just the local market at the time and the price, that whether it reflects that local market or whether you've got to adjust it. But unless you're not, as long as you're visible on realestate.com and visible on Domain, then you're always at the ready to get an inquiry. And as long as you follow through on the inquiries. People sometimes panic because of their life situations. We've got to sell the house. We've got to start the new job in the other state soon. That's it's more legitimate panic, but it still doesn't. It isn't reflective.
It doesn't serve you to panic. It
doesn't serve you at all. No.
And what are the ways to combat that? Do you think? The main thing that I would think of is knowing your stuff. If you are really across what price bracket you're looking at for similar properties, and you're very aware, you've done your research on your own house and the nearby, comparable houses. That's a big step where you can be comfortable in the knowledge that no, I'm doing the right thing. It just, it's just not happening at the moment. Things take time. I think the average, nobody really knows, but I think around the average time to sell a house is probably a few months from a...
Yeah, before the boom, which is now probably over, it might have been during the boom, as low as a month on average across Australia. Who knows? Houses were like Frisbees, you just put them out there and people would grab them. But in normal times, which is the majority of times, again, nobody knows. I don't see any published, maybe Australian Bureau of Statistics will have it, but the average selling time is probably about 4 months. And that's across commissionable sales, private sales, the whole gamut, Yeah. So, when you haven't got something sold in the first week or two, you need to just probably relax a little bit.
So how do you avoid panicking in those situations?
By exactly what you just said, by knowing that you've done, if you know you're on the right course to start with, you're less likely to second guess yourself when, because it's not a fluid thing like, not X number of buyers come into the market every week. When you first go to the market, there's usually more buyers than later. If you imagine a swimming pool, so let's say it's a hot summer day and there's 100 people in the pool and you dive in, so it's packed. That's you listing when you first list, and then everybody gets out in the afternoon and they've all had their swim. Well, after everyone's seen it, that initial flurry of people have seen it, new people have to come in, and the new people coming in is generally, not always, but generally fewer than the catchment at the start.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you can think of that you sort of behaviours you see in private sellers or not, or agents that you really think is worthwhile to avoid in general? I mean, I tell you what, burning bridges.
Oh, yes.
Burning bridges with inquirers, yeah.
So true, yeah. You just don't know. Sometimes people, when they're fishing around because they're interested in the property, they may, be less than flattering about your property. And look, even if they offer, let's say you're selling a $500,000 property and they come in at $450,000, and, instead of just getting cranky and just, saying get lost. I mean, I've seen cases where people come up massively, like there's just some people who just like to, what have they got to lose? Try their hand first off. But that's a good point, Jesse. Don't burn your bridges. I know that's a good thing in life, but especially in real estate. Yeah,
it just doesn't help you at all. And they can even talk to their friends as well, other people who are possibly in the market, and then say, I dealt with this guy and it was just, he was, abusive or just angry, a very offendable person. So they're not going to want to do it either. It doesn't mean you have to kowtow to whatever they're saying.
No.
If they're coming in and saying, disparaging your property and saying it's whatever, it's not worth this.
Yeah.
They're entitled to their opinion. It doesn't mean you have to agree with it and fully accept it and embrace it, but to have that defensive reaction and burn the bridge, then you're guaranteed to never get a sale with that person, which is not what you want.
Exactly. I mean, if they're not a buyer, I mean, there's no use. If they're a genuine buyer, right, and they're coming in at $450,000 on a $500,000 property, is it because that's all they can afford, right? You don't know. They could be trying to get a bargain, or it may be all they can afford. It might be the limit of their borrowing. You're generally not going to know that, so don't make a call as to whether that's it. Just say, look, Stephen, I really, really appreciate the offer of $450,000. It's way below what we need today. But hey, Stephen, do you mind if you haven't bought a property within 4 weeks and we still haven't sold? Can I come back to you in a month? And then you'll truly know, and you've asked permission to call them back. As you said, don't burn the bridges. Yeah. So and then you might need them in a month, and you might come together at $475,000 or something.
Keep the lines of communication open. There's no benefit to you.
No.
It's also just simply put in a mental capacity. It's a waste of energy.
Exactly. You're not going to be relaxed, and you start undermining your own confidence in selling your own property, and that's not a good mindset.
Yeah, I think that covers most of the really exclamation point, do not do this behaviour for today, unless there are anything else you can think of.
Look, I always say, and apologies to all the agents out there, and I've been guilty of this as well, but, some agent behaviour is not to be mimicked. And like we said before, if you don't want to sell your house, hide the price, hide the address, and be really hard to contact. So mimic the good things that agents do, and avoid those things.
Yeah, have your listing look professional. Have a good group of images. Have your your copywriting. Not, well, I was going to say, have the grammar all done, but I've seen some agents where it's not. Fix that up. Have it looking presentable, nice. Be very contactable. In respect to property now, I would almost always recommend getting the SMS notifications add-on. It's a feature that's usually very well worth it. You get an instant text to your phone letting you know when an inquiry has happened, so you can be on top of that all of the time without checking emails.
Let's say Tom.
Tom again, yep.
He's looking at your property, and he makes a phone call and gets your number, which we do for everybody. But then Lisa, a real estate agent, rings him up 5 minutes later with another property, or honey, make sure you bring some milk home, pick up the kids, or something distracts Tom, right? So if they can get a text message, that has the address of the property and Tom's number going to the owner and vice versa, that's really powerful, because people are not just looking at, it's unlikely that people are just looking at your property. So you want an imprint on them that, in this busy life that, they're not going to lose or get distracted.
You're making time for them as well. By getting back to them quickly. You're valuing their time. They'll appreciate that. Even it's very important with sale listings, but even more so with rental listings, because people are applying for a lot of different
Yeah,
listers
very
almost
true.
certainly. So
Yes, yeah.
you've got to be fully on top of that from the get-go.
Yeah. You know, I think harking back to when we were talking about pricing too, you was saying about, you know, what other don'ts. I'm pretty ambivalent, but leaning down against mainly doing price ranges. Price ranges seem a little bit silly to me. They're valid. You know, I'm not saying they're completely bad, but if I said to you, my house is $950,000 to $1 million, what are the majority of people going to?
I'm going to try and get that for $950,000.
Yeah, the majority of people. Some people will pay the $1 million. They just want your house. But let's talk about the majority, $950,000. So haven't you just set the bar really low straight away?
Yeah.
If you're going to do the range, do it this way. We'll use that example. So let's say your bottom line was $960,000.
Right.
Okay. So now your range should be $970,000 to $1 million.
Right.
So make sure that because people perceive the bottom of the range as your bottom line, make sure it's not.
Yep.
So, you know, have a bottom line that's above.
Because that's what you'll probably get some offers at.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
And so that's probably another thing I see a fair bit of. Nothing wrong with price range if you do it that way. Yeah. Yep.
Well, thanks very much for your time, Andrew.
Welcome,
that'll wrap us up, and hopefully get you back on very soon so we can discuss some more topics that people want to hear discussed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.